introduce ourselves, and then you guys can introduce yourselves again, and then we'll start in. And we're not here to tell you anything necessarily. We're here to listen, and we're here to build a relationship that maybe can be something we can build on in the future rather than what we've been dealing with in the past. So with that, I'm Mark Johnson. I'm the director of the Association of Counties. And Bruce?
I'm Bruce Strinden. I'm a Morton County Commissioner, and I'm currently president of the North Dakota County Commissioners Association.
Okay, and I'm Charlotte Sandvik. I'm the county treasurer in Cass County, and also this is my former county. We still have land here, so it still is my county.
You still pay taxes.
Yes. And then I'm also on the North Dakota Association board, and also on the NACO board.
I'm Randy Sukkot. I'm in my 14th year of county commissioner as well as county, and I also serve as first vice president of the Association of Counties.
Aaron Burst, legal counsel.
I'm Steve Reiser. I'm the Social Service Director for the Social Service District of Dakota Central. It's the 4 counties of Mercer, McLean, Oliver, and Sheridan. We formed one agency out of those 4 county agencies. And I also have the honor of serving as the president of the Board of Directors for the North Dakota Association of Counties.
I'm Wayne Oyen, Griggs County Highway Superintendent and 911 Coordinator.
Connie Esslinger, treasurer, and I remember when Andy Hagel started these president tours.
Yep.
Wes Strait, Chief Deputy.
Kelly Vincent, I'm the clerk of court and recorder. Samantha Larson, I'm the auditor.
My name is Chad Peterson. I'm a Cass County Commissioner, and I serve on Commissioner's Board with Mr. Strinden.
Danelle Presky-Hushka, and I am part of the lobbying team with the Association of Counties and also assist with communications.
I'm Jeff Esslinger. I'm the communications manager.
Jamie Tennyson, State's Attorney for both here in Nelson County.
Dale Peterson, Griggs County Commissioner.
I'm glad you brought up the name Andy Hagel. He was a good friend of mine, and he served this organization very well. And then he got elected to the legislature, and he tried his best as a county commissioner / legislator to get good laws passed for counties. He worked so hard at it that he sometimes made the leadership mad at him because he wouldn't take no for an answer. So he was very good at it. Is his wife still living in town?
Yes.
Yep. She does. Okay. Yeah. Howdy. Hi. We ran out of seats.
Mark Johnson.
There's one up here.
The other way. All right, you can have that one. I'll keep this one.
Maybe you'll have company.
Good. Yeah, I'm feeling all alone. Okay.
I guess first thing I might say before we get into talking maybe about social service funding that we're looking at, some other programs that we have for the association, is that my father once told me that you can't have anything unless you ask for it. And we're asking for you guys to come back into the association in a full way and help get the benefits that we think we can offer to you. And I'm not putting any pressure on anybody, I'm just asking. And I wish that maybe down the road here you would consider looking at being a full partner in the association. You do participate in the State Association of Counties, but you do not with the county commissioners, and you do not with the National Association of Counties. We have chosen to support your membership in the National Association of Counties ourselves because we feel very strongly that Charlotte Sandvik serves on the national board, and she would not be able to be a member of the board of directors if not all counties are members. What happens at the national level is every state gets one board member, and then if you are 100% state, where every county pays dues to the National Association of Counties, then we get an extra board member. And Charlotte has been very helpful being that extra board member with a gentleman by the name of Daryl Dukart, who lives out in the western side of the state. It's important. I think the National Association of Counties can demonstrate to you many, many ways in which they deliver benefits. And one obvious one is just PILT, just supporting the payment in lieu of taxes. And I believe you get some of those. And to say nothing about working on legislation that's going through Congress, like overtime rules and some of those things that will impact you as a county. So please think about it seriously. And other than that, we're going to give you a little snapshot of some of the things that we are doing as an organization on behalf of all the counties. And then we're really here to listen. And if you have some issues or some concerns or something you want to talk about in a positive fashion, we're here to listen. So, Steve, do you want to?
Sure, I can start. One of the things that we're pretty involved in and was really part of what, one of our main goals for our strategic plan was to work on social service funding. Social service funding started last biennium. There was the Senate Bill 2206 was passed, and in that bill the state took over some of the program costs that counties were paying. They were paying 25% of the cost of foster care, 25% of the cost of subsidized adoption that occurs in our state, and the state took those over in full. What that amounted to for counties was about $19 million over the biennium. And also in that piece of legislation, they also opened the door to have a interim study and a working group to work on trying to come up with some type of mechanism to have the state fund social services. And so what I've been on the working committee for the last 2 years approximately. Randy serves with me on that committee, and we have been trying to work on a formula that would move the funding from social service or from counties to the state. One of the reasons that we're looking at doing that is, and quite frankly, we have pretty good support on our interim legislative committee, which happens to be this political subdivisions taxation committee. They, the legislators there and senators, or representatives and senators, really see that there is a disconnect between funding social services with property tax dollars. It's pretty easy to see that if you have good roads, good law enforcement, good emergency services, that those will have an impact on your property values. But funding social services, not so much. It doesn't seem to be there seems to be a disconnect. And you know, property taxes linked pretty closely to property values. So they see that there is a disconnect and that there should be something probably done differently and should be some state dollars to do that. So they have been pretty supportive in our work, and we've been reporting to that committee pretty regularly. I will try to give a few details about the funding. I shared open it up at the end for any questions you might have, but I'll just give you kind of the premises for the funding or the foundation of it. Our main premise is that counties should be paid for the work that they do. And so we are working on a formula that will pay counties based on their caseload. And we've divided social services into two types of caseload. One is what we call economic assistance, and the other is social services. And we have a different amount for each group and then each caseload and such. So in order to come up with a dollar amount of a starting figure, we took we know what everybody's expenses were for each of those categories for the year 2015. We also know what their caseload is in each category. So you divide the expense by the caseload and you come up with a number that should work in our formula. One thing that we realized though in developing the formula is that larger counties have the opportunity to be more efficient in doing the work than smaller counties. So what we did is we've developed a weighting system. And the weighting system on the economic assistance side goes from 1, which is Cass County. They get 1 to 1. And then a smaller county like Griggs could be all the way up to 2. So what that means is this: if in fact, I'll just throw the dollar figure out, if we were being reimbursed $20 per case, if Cass County was being reimbursed $20 per every case, those smaller counties could be reimbursed up to $40 for the case, a factor of 2. Some counties are going to be 1.25, some are going to be 1.5, some are going to be 1.75, all the way up. And so we've kind of factored that in to try to make it fair for all counties. The other thing that we have really stressed that's important to our committee is that no county can operate with less money than what they had expenses the year before. And so we've developed in our formula a hold harmless clause that says no county will have less than 102% of what they expended the year before. So if you expended $100,000 this year or $1 million this year, you would get 102% at the very minimum for the next year. And so with that kind of being just the basic framework of our funding formula, that's how we're moving forward, because we don't want any counties to be short in paying for those expenditures. The big question, of course, is with the downturn in the economy and everything being so tight at the state, how can this be funded, or how can this happen? And what we're proposing in our work is the fact that every county right now has been receiving approximately 12% to 12% rebate, so to speak, on their property tax. So if you look at your property tax bill, it has 12% taken off, and that was covered by the state. And the state was getting the revenue to pay that 12% through oil revenue and such. And so what they did is they put aside this percentage of the oil revenue to go right away for property tax relief. The legislature, during the last legislative session, made that provision again. So they are collecting money from oil revenues to put into this pot, if you will, to say that, we're going to have property tax relief, and we're going to have hopefully somewhere between $250 and $300 million for property tax relief in there. And so what we've been proposing are going to propose to the legislature is that every county should receive 12%, but some of that percent should be for social service funding. So if on the average, the state average is about 5% is for social service funding. So if you were an average county, you'd get 5% for the social service funding, 7% for the rest of it. So every county would still receive 12%, but it might be in different proportions. If my county was the other way around, where I needed 7% for social services, then I'd only get 5%. But everybody would get 12%. And that's what we're aiming for and trying to get. The people that are on our interim legislative committee, we have the tax chairman from both the Senate and the House, and they have been very supportive of the idea. And they like the idea and think that that is a good way to go. One of the things that we feel that is really positive about it is as time goes on, and if we can get them to fund social services, as that grows, that will probably over time eventually grow to be over 12%. And so what we'll have is not property tax relief, but we'll have true property tax reform. Because what we've done is we've taken 20 mills off of every county's property tax. Because what would happen is 20 mills that are now allowed for social services, and many counties are right at 20 mills, and those would go away. Those would no longer be assessed. And so not only do we have the support, I think, of the legislature, the governor is on board. The governor's been attending all our meetings pretty regularly, and it's a big part of working on this program. The only thing about the governor, when he gets in an idea on a working committee, he rolls up his sleeves and he's right there with you. He really works hard with you, and he's been in the process all the way. I feel really positive that the governor is going to put this into his budget that he's going to present, And although he is not running again, you know, it will be his budget that will start the legislative year. And he will have the dollars in there for this particular funding. So without getting into it too deeply, I think I'll stop there. But if you have questions, I'd sure answer them. I do want to give Randy credit. Randy works on the committee with me as a commissioner, so it's not just social service directors or anything like that on the committee. There's also, we have the Cass County Auditor also serves on our committee, and then we have some commissioners. So if you have a question about that, I'd sure try to answer it, or I'd defer to somebody who can.
Rather than playing the proverbial shell game with the funding on this, if the state is going to take over the funding, then why would they leave the county structure in place in its inefficiency as it stands? There doesn't need to be 53 welfare offices in North Dakota. That seems idiotic.
I think you make some good points. One thing about it is that we feel pretty strongly that the local entities can manage social services more efficiently than you can from the larger cities.
Really?
Yes, we do.
We spend $400,000 managing that in a county of 2,000 people. That's efficient?
Well, you're going to have those costs are there. Well, they're going to be somewhere. You have to. What happens is if that's what your budget is, $450 million. Okay.
No, 400. I'd say 400.
390 million last year.
390,000.
Yeah.
390,000.
It's bumping on 20 mils.
Okay,
so,
right. It
so
is.
it's 380,000 roughly, or
Right,
390.
and so what that is covering is you have to, you know, in social services, that is covering 60% of those dollars is salaries, and another 25% is benefits.
I know where it's going.
And so those people are going to have to be staffed here.
Less of those people.
Well, they're going to be staffed.
Statewide.
Okay, they're going to be staffed here because this is where the need is. The people that need your assistance are going to come to this office. They're not going to be able to all to go to Devil's Lake or to Grand Forks or to Fargo. They're going to need to have some local offices to provide those services. Now, when you talk about the numbers,
one every 20 miles.
Okay, very good.
Is 19 miles away.
Great, and I'm glad you brought that up.
45.
I'm glad you brought that up because
Carrick's
in our
45.
formula, we are trying to put in incentives for counties to join together as districts, like we have done. I hear exactly what you're saying. I live
think
in
counties should join together, not just welfare offices. I mean,
I can't argue with you there.
This isn't 1889, guys.
So,
well, Steve is a perfect example, though, because he's the social service director for 3 counties.
4 counties.
Four counties. And he goes to all 4 of those counties over the course of a week or at least every 2 weeks. He's in those counties working with the staff. But there's staff that are sitting in those local jurisdictions. You know, if you have a child abuse situation come up on a Saturday night, you can't wait for the state to come out and try to fix the problem or deal with it.
I know there'll have to be staff in the field, but not as many staff.
and I think,
Oh, I'm getting that.
yeah, and if I could just use our like Mark said, we have 4 offices. We have 2 counties. One is Sheridan and one is Oliver County. Very small counties. One has about a population of 1,300, another about 1,800. But what they do is our staff, that we want to keep those doors open so that we're serving the people that need to be there. And so we have, I'll give you an example, Center, we have an eligibility worker there that does not handle any cases in Center. She handles all our cases, long-term care cases in Washburn. And so even though we have our whole house there, because we can send things electronically, we store things electronically, and we do things like that, we're trying to build some efficiencies that way. So we have an experienced worker who does that for our entire district. And so we have been able to cut our staff some and try to keep our costs down. And that's what we're talking about, is trying to encourage other counties to do the same. And whether other counties, unfortunately in our district, I can tell you that not all other our offices have taken our lead, although our state's attorney does share. We share one state's attorney between McLean and Sheridan. So, we're slowly trying to get there, but, yep, we hear you.
And a little bit to answer his question too, I think it was wasn't it the last legislative session that they tried to get the state to take it over, and it did get turned down, just to take over social services. And part of that because there is.
The way the reformulation worked, it didn't have hardly just a very little effect on Griggs.
Well, in some counties, they are they're small, but they didn't want to lose their staff in there because they are a little bit isolated or something like that. It's a little tough, but.
That's a philosophy difference. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But they did try it. I think the other thing is it would be taking over 800 or 900 FTEs. I don't remember how many it was.
It's 900.
900
it's about
FTEs,
900 FTEs.
Full-time staff for the state. And I think that was part of the whole thing too. They didn't want to add 900 jobs to the state.
To get into detail about the incentives, I'm not sure that's where you're going, but there are incentives there to try to get counties to form districts like what we have.
And in many cases, it's also somewhat incumbent upon the commissioners and the other county officials themselves to reach out to neighboring entities and try to reach something they can collaborate on. It doesn't always work, but often it does.
This was the proposal too that it seems like we had probably the vast majority of counties that were in favor of doing.
A number of the counties told us they just didn't want to lose their local staff because it's part of the community. And they're right there where they can help people. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to see, Sean, some consolidation over time. And there might be some thinning out of some of the staff. And there probably will be more shared services where counties will find other ways to come together and share a staff person to do certain things.
Well, there's no question that that's going to happen. The question is whether you do it proactively or you wait until your back is against the wall. That is the difference. Mm-hmm. People that think that having more government jobs in your little community is economic development are just dead wrong. That's just the way it is. Yeah. So the people in that camp are wrong-headed. So I don't think that's a valid argument.
Yeah, I'm not, and that's really not what I'm just saying.
That's what you said. People have that argument that they want
people
to remain. But from my standpoint, if you have an entity that you restructure and you reduce the number of administrative costs, the people that are actually doing the casework are still going to be somewhere, and some of them are going to be local depending on what the caseload is locally. Mm-hmm. So I think you can get both things accomplished without reducing services to the public. That's my point. And this thing seems like a long, convoluted way to get part way there. And there's going to be incentives, but are those incentives going to be strong enough to motivate these small counties to do the right thing? I don't know that. I haven't seen the details, but that's what I worry about.
Yeah, it's not an immediate answer to trying to reduce government. It's not, but it's a start in the right
position. What's faster?
Start in the right direction.
But I do think you'd agree that to get rid of 20 mills off of our property tax, people is the right way to go.
Well, it depends on. If it's going to come from somewhere, it's going to come from somewhere.
But property taxes are not the right way to fund social services.
I agree with you. And we're going to replace it with 12.5 mills of property tax.
But you understand, relief, that could go away in this next legislative, or if they do take over the cost of social service, that's probably in place.
We're waiting for them to.
Yeah. And the money is there.
The
money is there for this, because that's one of the first buckets that they fill up with the oil tax revenues is property tax relief. So this would be the real reform. get them to get it off of property taxes, and hopefully it forever stays off
The
of
way they're
property
pushing the
taxes.
valuations, tax relief is not in my vocabulary from the state of North Dakota.
Yeah.
So, and when the schools quit getting the 50 mils and our real estate taxes go up by 60%, I mean, you tell the guy on the street that he's had property tax relief, he might.
That's why reform
Be
is so,
very happy.
that's why reform is what we need, is true reform.
I've got a sheet here that I'm gonna make available and I might just walk through it real quickly just to give you some perspective on the benefits of participating in the state organization.
Can we pass them on? So you
Okay,
can visit?
go ahead.
You have a copy?
Yep. Just real quickly, the County Commissioners Association and the Association of Counties have always tackled the major funding issues that are important to counties, and we've tried to frame them and identify them and then work with the legislature. Not every time can you be successful dealing with the entire legislature, but they do recognize that we have a voice up there, and they do listen, and they do try to pay attention, and it helps them, by working with us, it helps them communicate more effectively with their citizens back home. But I've laid out some dollar amounts just because I guess we're talking about dollars. In the area of road funding, starting in 2009, we were able to bring $145,000 to Griggs County. In 11, it was 123, then 127 because the formula went down. But then in 14, 15, and 16, we've been able to deliver close to $2 million in a couple of years and $1.5 million in the other years. And that was purely by convincing the legislature that they needed to fund the non-oil producing counties and not just the oil producing counties. And it has made a big difference in terms of the ability to fix some of the roads that you have never been able to address, particularly those collectors routes and those very important routes that get to other roads. And then in the area of human services, you've seen some savings as a result of us lobbying the legislature. If we're successful in doing the social service program, we would see $390,000 savings to Griggs County. Other miscellaneous issues, refunding of the state bonding fund. The state bonding fund was in trouble, and we were able to get refunding into that. It comes out of insurance premiums, and also counties pay into that bonding fund. The state prohibited from shifting liability to the counties in certain contracts. We made sure that the state couldn't transfer its liability to counties. That's what they've tried to do from time to time, and it just is not a good situation for counties. Inmate medical costs run through Medicaid. That has lowered the costs for dealing with inmates in your institutions. Increased state aid for public health. We were able to find some fundings to come back to the public health districts. And then counties retain the overweight permit fees. We started that in 2011. We have another bill that it's got a sunset on it in 2017. And we've got a bill that's going through the interim legislative committee that will remove that sunset. So you will be able to retain those overweight permit fees if you do overweight enforcement in your county. And then counties retain the civil penalties on the overweight in 2013. And then we shifted the public administrative costs to the state. And we're going to try to hang on to that this time around. But there is some attempts by the legislature to try to pull that back. But we think we can hang on to that. And then we expanded the investment options that counties have through the State Investment Board and by working with banks and other institutions that you would deposit your dollars with. So those are just a couple of things that we think are important to recognize. And the whole point is we we have to do this all together. We have to do this as 53 counties. When we have an outlier, it makes it sometimes difficult because we might have a legislator that says, well, you know, the county doesn't belong to the association. We don't need to listen to you. And we're not trying to grow government here. We're trying to just make the state be responsible for many of the things that they require us to do down the road. So that's just a snapshot of what we have to offer to you. So.
To add to what Mark said, I think a lot of what we do from a legislative standpoint is we're trying to not allow the state to grow county government and the obligations that we have financially and structurally in terms of providing services. But Mark went through kind of a list of things regarding some of the funding that we have worked on over the past few years. I can tell you that Senate Bill 2206, which gave this county up just about $44,000 in subsidized adoptions and foster care reimbursements. Our legislative committee and the staff at the association, we worked on that for 3 sessions before we got it passed. Now we're kind of on the brink of having what Steve was discussing with the social services bill passed. Excuse me, and those things both truly represent property tax reform, even though there's certainly some financial relief there, but that is reform because it's removing items from the local tax rolls that truthfully never should have been there in the first place because they're state and federal mandated programs. Chad?
Well, I guess from my perspective, I'm Chad Peterson from Cass County. The thing I like about the association, and I've been active in it since I was elected 4 years ago, I'm up for election now, is the fact that we don't necessarily pick or choose based on the scale of the county. So if it's a big county, it's a small county, it doesn't matter. We're all impacted sort of symmetrically. And we'll obviously have the League of Cities that's out there lobbying for their own interests. I think without the Association of Counties, getting our message through would be a lot harder. And you can look at any individual county going out, and if it's a smaller county, it's even more difficult. If it's a larger county, you like to think that people will pay attention because there's more population and there's more revenue coming in. It's not the case. That's not what I've seen. I testified for these bills that helped get you some road funding because we need that money. And I was lucky enough to work out, and you've heard me say this in front of the Senate, I was lucky enough to work out in Watford right when it first started popping out there. So I acknowledge the need. They did need additional revenue, and a lot of it. But the problem was our friends out west often forget how much we contribute in terms of manufacturing, ag, and all the other nuances that we participate with and have that are not recession-proof, but borderline. Having us in the room, looking at them straight in the face, having them acknowledge it. One little anecdote I can say, when I first testified for the first surge bill, one of the senators, and I can't remember who it was, said, not many oil wells in Cass County, are there? And I said, well, we have little oil wells, we call them cash registers. And we contribute on an annual basis to state tax revenue, be it income, be it sales tax. And it's nice to have us as a group of counties in there reminding, yes, we love oil, yes, we want to see it succeed, but we grow a lot of wheat. We grow a lot of beans and sugar beets out over here. That's all income tax revenue, and all of those things abuse our roads. And again, without us, I fear that message might not be as loud as it would need to be otherwise.
We are members of the association.
Yes, you are, and I thank you for that.
Speaking of property tax, how did the association come down on these new rule changes on the assessors? I noticed on your website it says that the job of the tax director is to appraise property. That is absolutely incorrect. Anyway, there's no appraisers that are assessors, I don't think. At least there's not in Griggs.
Yeah, well, I guess maybe that might be a misnomer in terms of appraising, the word appraisal. probably shouldn't be on there, but thank you for looking at the website that close.
Well, my question was because now we're having such an issue trying to find assessors at the township level, and we can't find a tax director at the county level, because there's nobody qualified to do it. Why did there need to be a change? There didn't need to be a
Well,
change.
we didn't go in and support that change.
That's all I was asking.
Yeah, we did
How
not.
did it happen?
It happened because there was a majority of both tax committees, in the House and the Senate, that wanted to get back to a fair assessing process, and they felt that there were numerous examples where township officers assessing their neighbor's property wasn't cutting it, and that assessments weren't uniform across the entire county or across the state. And by eliminating the local assessor in a township would have somebody at the county level overseeing it all in a larger context and create a fairer taxing system.
That's not what it says in the century code, though. The county doesn't assess property. The tax director doesn't assess property.
Who does?
The township assessor.
Oh, okay.
But your
Well-
tax director has to sign off on it, as though if it's accurate. They don't just get to walk away. There's the final stamp is actually the county commission, then it goes to the state to be appealed.
County commission.
Yeah, but our tax director has to sign off on the valuation that's correct. He then brings it to us as commissioners, and if we agree or disagree with our landowner, they can then appeal to the state.
Right. Right.
So that was really an initiative that the legislature took on themselves, and they wanted to try to get back to a fairer system. And I don't need to take the time to give you some classic examples of assessors who were assessing property. There's one that I know of in
The
Burlington.
property tax comes back to the county, so what's the state care? Are they Big Brother?
Oh, well, you could call it a big brother, but it's their responsibility as a state policy body to make sure that taxes are equal throughout the state, within plus or
Who
minus.
decided that?
Right. Well, it's always been there. We've always had a state board of tax equalization,
Yep.
and that's why it was put in place back years ago. We've got
They're making the process impossible at the local level in these rural counties. It's not gonna work.
You mean with all the training and everything that's required? Okay.
In a little county, there's only 20 townships in Griggs County. We don't need a full-time tax director. Who's gonna go get trained to be a tax director to have a half-time job? Nobody. So the county commissioners is gonna do it. I mean, what's the state gonna do? Come and take our keys away? I mean, that's tough.
well, that might make you take training.
One of our commissioners is already certified.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good.
That's an idiot rule.
Well, we couldn't stop that from happening as much as we might have tried. And we tried, we put it aside for a couple of sessions because it's been building for a long time. And finally, the initiative and the inertia in the legislature forced that bill through. And there were a lot of speeches on the floor that are saying exactly what you're saying. But the bill passed, and we couldn't get in the way of it in the end. And it passed towards the end of the session, and they do that on purpose. They wait for some of those sticky issues like that, and they shove them through the last 3 days of the session. And it makes it difficult to try to fight it. So.
There were a number of counties and tax directors who did testify in support of it.
So, yeah, so that's what we want to hear. We want to hear what problems you are having with anything else that's going on, that either we're doing or we're not doing. Grab a glass of water. I'm listening.
The whole property taxation process right now is very frustrating to us because the bureaucracy in Bismarck hires the bureaucracy in Fargo that they fund to raise the valuations on the counties. And then there are so many mills that are out of our grasp. So the overall effect on us is the cost of the property owner just keeps going up and up and up, and we can't control it. Doesn't matter how much we lower the mills from the county level, the school, the library, the hospital, all those things just keep cranking away. And it's all due to these valuations that they think are more fair. There's nothing fair about it.
I think everybody agrees, including many legislators, that this thing needs to be overhauled. But what they can agree on, and haven't quite figured out yet, is how to do it. Mark, is that a fair statement?
That's true. It gets talked about in every legislative session. Both tax committees complain about some of the same things that you're talking about, and yet they still can't figure out a way to do it and make it fair, and not like squeezing a balloon. You know, they squeeze it one area, it's going to pop out over here.
Right.
You know, and there's always the balance between residential, commercial, and industrial. And if they raise one, then the other one maybe might benefit, and it's difficult for them to do it in a 4-month process with 6 or 7 people on a committee. They really can't come up with something, despite the fact that the tax commissioner and the tax department try to help them make sense out of it, but they don't.
Maybe this is a little off base, but to your point regarding other entities, what I've always said is local elections matter. We took our mills down 6 this year in Cass, just the commission. But you'll see the Fargo City Commission come probably with the same or even a quarter mil higher, with the valuation increases of roughly 12% predicted. That's a massive tax increase. School board, we capped them on a local level with our home rule. They're going to be voting in March. You're asking us to vote again to raise our cap.
And part of the problem with some of the taxes, like in our case, the library and the local hospital, the wording in the measures at the time that their vote was taken, which was years ago, it was mills, because the valuations had changed very little for forever. So when they wrote these measures, they wrote them in mills and instead of dollars. Well, then here comes the state telling us, you got to jack. Now, instead of a mill being worth $9,700, it's worth $19,000. So the library is getting $80,000 a year instead of $35,000.
In Cass County, they'd be getting $755,000 a mill.
Right.
So
it's just frustrating.
Yep, and I agree.
I don't think it's justified, and I don't think the people would vote for it today if put it on the ballot. But maybe they would. I don't know. I know they don't know about it.
What didn't the last legislative session address some of this and change some of these entities that were like mills? I'm thinking like weed board, ambulance boards.
Those were all consolidated.
They were all consolidated.
Yep.
And it
that was part of that big tax
rather
bill.
than so like.
But they moved into the general fund, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's dollars now, so like before, like I served on the rural ambulance board and we could do 1 mill or 2 mills, and you're exactly right, the money's kept going up and up because we kept the mills the same. But now it's all done by dollars, so we have to request
some things.
We have to request 20,000, 40,000.
Right.
So they made some changes in it.
Yeah, and we worked on that to try to make it so it wouldn't impact counties as much as they wanted to, and also so that the county commission would have the ultimate authority to decide where the priorities lie. So that's why a lot of those mills were blended into the general fund, and that you can still spend it in dollars, but you don't have to spend it in mills that are placed on an increased value of property.
There's also some word language that addresses issues that were voted on and kind of sunsets them, right? And then they have to go back to another vote.
Yep. some of these are sunsetted at 10 years, so they'd have to go back in.
Yep.
The
So-
hospital one is one of
Yeah.
them. I mean, but it'll be 10 years from last year, I think, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
we're stuck with it for a while. Unless we put it on the ballot or something. The commission probably can.
You can put it on the ballot, yep.
Now, there was always a bunch of drop dead dates for budgeting in the Century Code. Did they get taken out? Can't find them.
No, I don't think so. I think October 10th or October 15th or one of those dates is a drop dead date for having a county budget prepared. The school boards have to have their budget to you by sometime in September, I believe. I don't know, the auditor may know those dates.
I have October 10th.
I know that's
But
what
they
we
were
wanted to use,
questioning
but we can't
it.
find it in the Century Code anymore.
It's there. I know it is.
Yeah, ours is,
We can find it.
we're first meeting in October because we can't make that
Right.
10th. Otherwise, we'd have to have a special meeting between.
Yeah, it's something we can find.
Oh, yeah,
We'll
okay.
find it.
James, your turn.
Anything else? Something, anything on your mind?
No.
No?
We can bring up just a couple of issues, and I'm not the expert on them, but I'll bring them up. One is that Donnell could probably speak to it about the
Sure.
voting machines.
Sure. So we are working with the Secretary of State's office in drafting some legislation to fund election equipment for a new updated system statewide. The issue is over a decade ago, states, counties all across the country, the federal government paid for and delivered, election equipment all over the country. Those funds have dried up. There's no federal funds any longer. However, everyone's equipment is kind of reaching the end of its life. So states and counties nationwide are really taking a look at this issue and trying to figure out what their next steps are in funding the new age of election equipment. No one wants a failure on their hands on election day. We just came from Nelson County, and she actually said that one of her scanners quit on her on election day this year in June. And she was really scared, she had a backup, so she put that into play. But a real scary thought of what would happen come November if something like that would happen. We have a group that is working on collecting the RFPs and putting together a cost analysis. Kind of our first estimates from the Secretary of State's office are probably around $25 million. So it's a big price tag, and something that pretty much everybody in the state needs sooner than later.
And legislators have to get elected also through those machines, so we hope that they have a better understanding of the machines have got to work, otherwise they won't get elected. Yeah, that's there. And then the other issue with law enforcement is radios. And our radios are not, they can't talk to each other in many cases. And we need an interoperable system that will allow everybody to talk to each other. Classic example is we've got 9 sheriffs in Morton County right now working on this Dakota Access Pipeline issue where the Native Americans are protesting the pipeline route, and these sheriffs come out there with their radios and they can all talk to each other, and we've got to come up with a system. Unfortunately, there's a heavy price take on that system, but we're going to try to work with the DES, the Disaster Emergency Services Agency, the governor's office, and try to see if we can come up with monies that would go towards better radio systems for law enforcement. So I don't know if you're experiencing any problems here, but
Usually it's just one on the road. We don't have to really talk to anyone other than dispatch.
Mhm.
okay.
So we don't run into those problems too often.
Okay. This would cover all EMS and any disaster emergency response that would take place. But the current radios are not going to be serviced in future years to come. So Motorola isn't going to provide support for some of the radios that we have out there. But we got to work on that too.
Kind of going back to property tax, one thing that we've been working on, following up on last session, is a uniform, as you know, right now you get notices from not only the county, but the city, the schools, the parks. And so we've been working on a pilot project with Cass County to put out a unified, uniform tax notice, and it would have basically the breakdown of columns and listing, the change from one year to the next and breaking it out by county, schools, city, and parks. And then on there would also list when their hearings will be held. So instead of a citizen getting possibly 4 different notices and being confused by the percentage, they'll have it all on one sheet. And that's something that we're hoping to move forward through the session. We presented it to the auditors and treasurers group at their summer meeting, and they all seem to like the idea and understand that it's better in educating the citizens on their property taxes. And Cass County is going to try it out this year.
Yeah, we're sending them out, I think, in the next week or so.
Mm-hmm.
Here.
Yep.
I noticed.
So it'll be interesting.
It was very confusing for people. They were getting, 4 notices, and we get calls, that my taxes are going up $3,000, and because it just distorted it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely distorted it.
They thought the rates were exponentially increased. So it's 10 on top of 10 on top of 10.
Mm-hmm.
That gets to be a real scary number pretty quick when you own a bunch of land.
So that's why we're going to be the pilot to do this, to see how well this goes over.
And we had a gentleman last year show up at our tax board to protest his school taxes. He didn't, this is a very well-educated, extremely wealthy guy, owns a ton of land. So he's been paying however many millions a year. He didn't understand that the school tax was not administered by us, which shocked the heck out of me. But he just didn't, never had. He said, I'm always willing to pay a fair rate of increase, that's no problem, but when it accelerated to such a degree, now I'm at the door. And I said, well, your hearing was 2 weeks ago at the school district. Sorry.
Well, is there a net increase here? And that's mills.
Yep.
Anyway.
Absolutely.
So that's a bunch of baloney.
Well, we're trying to, Sean, eliminate as much.
Sean's not here.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I'm sorry. We're trying to eliminate as much baloney as possible. And we try to make sense out of some of this stuff. We also try to educate legislators so that they understand your business a lot better. But we can't get to everybody. And yet we try to deliver a strong, unified message. And that's all we can do at this point. So we are here to help you, believe it or not. And we're not from the
I'm
government.
not making accusations. What are you saying? We've had some frustrations.
Yeah, as it's been a tough couple of 3-4 years. So.
And I think that's one of the things that we really bring as a team is that we've got a lot of people, not just locally, but in the nation too. I went to my first association meeting in California in July, and the folks I met there were invaluable to me in terms of what we're going to have to do in Cass and the bigger counties regarding our drug addiction. Our jails are full of drug addicts; they're not full of career criminals, and our career criminals are way worse than they ever used to be. So I've actually touched base with folks in LA County because they've done this. They've got 17,500 people in jail. They've got 4,800 people in mental health jail. I can learn from them far better than I can learn from my local crew, be it just North Dakota, because they've gone through it. What they're going through now, what we're going through now, they went through 20 years ago. And what we do in the end, I guess I really don't know, but from a national perspective, that's where I'm going to find value. That's where I found value. And again, I was just at one meeting for a couple days, 3-4 days, with our association group. Reinventing the wheel is not something we have money nor time for.
Any other thoughts?
I don't know if they brought this up in Nelson County at all or not, but I know the commission shared some concern, and I have too, I guess, about the surge bills and the 16% that all the engineers have been getting. There's a lot of money that the private enterprise got that I don't think was earned, first of all, and I think something can be done about that. I know Aaron said he's was going to talk about it, but I don't know if any other counties brought it up. It's awfully frustrating to see all that money go to KLJ or Houston or whatever.
We're well aware of that, and we saw that coming down the pike, and we objected, and we had just about every engineering company in the state come in and lobby the legislature, and it stayed in the bill. So call it what you want. It was probably a sort of a buy-off of the engineering companies. But that was a legislative act and not something that we promoted or supported.
I wish we would have been smart enough to see it coming. We should have just went and hired some professional engineers and not have those guys do it.
And here's the thing about that, and that's what I was going to touch on, is that the other item we talked about was timing of it. What we had was a big problem, so we threw money at it. And what our engineering, I think the Engineering Association, 2 county engineers, as well as us, we talked about the timing of how that funding was allocated. What we'd ideally like is that money, that revenue, to be allocated early. And a lot of the smaller counties, to our south, Steel as an example, well, they're getting dollars similar to yours. Well, at $1 million a mile, you can't really do very much when you get $250,000. So we wanted to figure out, and we're working on this too, and we have our friends in Bismarck that may or may not disagree. Right now they disagree, but to portion that money out over time so you have a guaranteed revenue. So in 4 years, I can master plan out to do highway number X. I can hire my engineer today to get the plans in the box, get them designed ahead of time at a more cost-effective price. Because obviously if you dump a ton of work on a handful of engineers, they're going to accelerate their fees. It's just capitalism. So what you do is you give them a small amount of money ahead of time, let them figure out when they want to. I do architecture for a living, so I kind of got the gig on this. But you give them money ahead of time where they can plan and do the engineering the year before you need the drawings. So then when it comes to bidding, you bid in January, you bid in December when nobody is booked up for work. So that's the other thing, again, we've been working on is the timing of how all this revenue hits the stream, because right now it was too much too fast.
But we're spending a bunch of money on engineering to gravel roads. We don't necessarily need to spend money at all.
And yeah, that's your prerogative. Yep.
We can't. No, if it's that surge money, we got to do it. It's not optional.
No, and that gets to the timing of it, where you could bank that money and you don't have to expend it.
Spend it at all.
Exactly.
Wayne could get the gravel tested and hire somebody to put it on the road.
Yep.
That's after all what he does. So I think we're wasting money when we're doing that to a large degree.
But if you could reserve that, wouldn't it be helpful to you?
We just buy more gravel and gravel more roads if we didn't have to have an engineer.
Well, how you allocate that's a different question. But if you could get that money, instead of having to spend it in that calendar year or within the biennium, if you could bank that money and say it's $250,000 you would have gotten. If you could have saved that $500,000.
I'm just saying there's strings attached to it that guarantee the engineer a job.
And I'm agreeing with you. That shouldn't transpire in that. It shouldn't evolve that way. You should have more flexibility, and that's what we're trying to work toward.
And we were one of the counties that had a lot of missile sites. So, at one time the Air Force paid for a lot of our road maintenance, and they're gone now. So it's changed the way our funding works completely.
I think Mark made a good point in that when we work at the legislature, we're one voice as Indiaco, but when this came up, every engineering firm in the state was there voicing their opinion. And so, it was, we need to make sure that we get the help from all the counties to share the same voice, otherwise they just see one.
And I want to clarify, I wasn't calling out the association.
No, no.
I
No,
know that.
I know, and it is an issue we've heard in a lot of counties, as we've been on our trip, the exact same thing about the theft. Yeah, it is an issue.
I think we were kind of encouraged though to spend the money. You know, so it showed we had a need for more.
Right.
You know, so hurry up and get some projects lined up. And
Legislature didn't exactly foresee the price of oil going down as much as it did when
No.
they thought this was gonna go on forever. That's why they doubled the size of the state government in the last 8 years. They're having more fun than they can afford.
Well, they were.
I mean, it's
I agree.
awesome though.
Another-
I'd say that money that we got was really saved Griggs County because we had some roads that we couldn't, like you said, we couldn't afford to fix them. And
Well,
with that,
the federal funds are gone, basically.
yeah,
You're not getting any federal money to
Right.
fix
right.
roads.
The federal money is gone.
It wouldn't have
now,
been the
yeah.
state, and Wells County is the same thing. We wouldn't have got the state funding. We did, you know, we didn't use it on gravel. We had to have engineered anyway because we did some major road reconstruction, repaving and stuff.
Yeah, we did
And so in
repaving.
our case, we're, you know, the engineering needed to be
In some
done.
cases, you do need an
But,
engineer, but I'm
you
just
know,
saying.
if we wouldn't have had that state money, we'd really have some roads. I mean, we're already talking about grinding up some of ours anyway, but I don't know where we'd be if, you know, we'd just done some major projects, which now we can kind of kick the can down the road for a few years and see what happens. But,
And Griggs County with that big elevator over there by Hannaford, that increased a lot of traffic.
you know,
Propane tanks and
yeah.
Big plant.
fertilizer plant and stuff.
Well, that was the argument we made with the legislature, because the push was just to take the oil money and fund the oil counties. And we said, no, you've got to spread it out statewide, because everybody is in this game. And the other counties have other needs, like large elevators or agricultural changes, and crop production is increasing, the loads are increasing, all of that. So we were able to convince the legislature and use a little bit of politics, because we could take the eastern legislators and pit them against the western legislators, and the western legislators wouldn't get the money, all the money they wanted, unless they supported the eastern side. And that's just the game that gets played, and we know how to play it, so that's what we did.
And I think we were really effective with the second transportation bill that came out in, you know, the surge bill that was where the money went out right away, had a lot of strings on it, and had, you know, that it could only be used for the collector routes. And we were able to just say, you know, they need some flexibility in the second round of money because they have definitely some priority projects. And so we were able to get that lifted on that second round of funding. And that was a huge achievement for us, because that was when we traveled the state during one of the legislative breaks. That was the biggest concern we heard from the road guys. It's like, what good is this money if we can't use it where it's really needed?
We had to come up with the 10% also. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I guess my point is, dollar for dollar, I think we brought some money to Griggs County over the years, and we just want you to be a player in our organization as much as you can be. And we encourage you to participate whenever you can. Bruce is supposed to remind you that we do have our annual meeting. We do have our annual meeting in October, and I'd encourage any and all of you to participate in that meeting. It's a good chance to rub elbows with people that do like work that you do, and have their ways of doing it, and you can learn a lot, and it's usually a great opportunity. It's on October 9th and 10th in Bismarck, and they even have a little fun there once in a while too.
And then I'll say a thank you too for having us today before, and I don't mean to cut us off if we have other issues we want to talk about, but, you know, we thank you for coming out today, and thank you for having us. And we did bring you a little bag which you can decide how you're going to distribute amongst yourselves, but
There's your goodies in there.
there's some goodies in there for you guys, and
I think they cleaned out the storeroom, isn't that what happened?
Oh,
I'm not going to, you don't have to ask more than that, but they, but those are yours to go through, and the bag's yours, so.
I think, I'll speak to a little bit, I can't speak for the whole commission, but the county commissioners do this thing. I think the message there is that we understand that there's a need for an association, but it should kind of all be under one umbrella in our view. I mean, if there needs to be a different due structure that covers everything, then I think it should be, instead of getting, the $200 isn't really an issue. It's just the idea of it, I think, was you get a bill for the Auditors Association, bills for Tax Directors Association, you get all these little bills, and then the Association of Counties bills. It's like, why can't they just be, those things be provided under one due structure? I think that was kind of the message I heard in the meetings.
Okay. We can try to take a look at that.
I mean, I don't know what, maybe there's a reason for not doing that, I don't know.
Well,
I think that was part of the discussion anyway.
to be honest with you, and Bruce represents the county commissioners and their organization, but, the commissioners don't want to be,
It's not really a separate organization, is it?
no, it isn't.
Yeah.
No. We help manage both organizations.
Right.
I actually serve on the association, the county commissioners board as the secretary treasurer. I've never taken any notes and created any minutes, but I'm secretary treasurer. But it's an organization that wants to continue to exist, and it does give.
Well, all we can do.
Yeah, it does give the commissioners an opportunity to get together and talk constructively about policy. Because they make most of the policy that we try to administer in the legislative process. It's the commissioners that come up with it, and of course the dues have been kept relatively low in that organization. They don't amount to a great deal.
And I'll just say, from what I've observed from the association, the two groups, is that the county commissioners group is really represented by the county commissioners, and the other group has a number of other offices that are represented in it. And it's kind of important to have the county commissioners have their say, because they're the ones that have to make decisions about money and stuff like that. I mean, when it comes to making decisions on our board, I think that now appointed officials outnumber elected officials, possibly. Not quite, but getting close.
They're on there.
And so, that's why we would try to keep the county commissioners board there, so that they're fully represented, and then they can make some policies that they recommend to our full board. So if it is duplication, it's a good thing to look at it, but I think that's what I hear about the justification for it.
That seems problematic.
We used to years ago, when I first came to this organization, we had separate annual conventions. The commissioners would get together in November, and we'd get together in July as an association. And I did, and we as staff then did manage to combine the two together just to have one annual convention. And that has helped. But it didn't come easy. There were a lot of old-time county commissioners, I don't mean old by age, but had been commissioners for years, that loved having their own little organization and loved coming together. And they'd maybe get together and play bridge, but that would be what they did. And we brought them together so that we'd have more of a substantive meeting in which we could add a lot of workshops and a lot of educational opportunities and do it together. Now nobody complains about it anymore, but it took about 5 years just to get that done without people saying, hey, why don't we go back to the old way? Change, because change is hard. Change is difficult.
Well, I think the other thing too that is kind of going along with what both Mark and Steve said is that the commission, the position of county commissioner, and we as a group are the policy-making group for the counties. And many of the other elected and or appointed officials don't get that much engaged in the policy part of things and the overall budgeting part of things. So if you look at the association and you look at our county commissioners, our state board, to take that just a step further from our local level, we're also the policy-making board for the state, and we're the ones that go in then and getting feedback from everybody. We're the ones then that put together our policies and our legislative agenda as we move up on the legislative session. And that's something that really, that's one thing maybe that really sets us apart from the rest of the county officials, is our heavy involvement with the legislature, with setting the agenda, and also with working.
But the association is heavily involved in the legislative process. So
we have
not having-
staff within the association, but we also have many of our board members. 3 of us are sitting here right now who have spent a lot of time and will continue to spend a lot of time at the Capitol during the session, because we have bills that come up that they get a little tough to deal with.
Just a
there's
couple.
a lot of people that
My
deal
question
with it.
is, if the board of the association is not made up primarily of elected officials, primarily commissioners, then who sets the legislative agenda for the North Dakota Association of Counties? Not the county commissioners?
Yeah.
Essentially,
Yes, their organization brings the policy to us.
Yeah,
And they get some feedback.
It is
from us, but it's there.
It is fed to us from the various
Who's on top of the food
departments.
chain here?
Actually, the commissioners are the highest number on the.
They have the
association.
majority on the board of directors. They have 9 or 10 members, depending upon the year. And then the other elected officials are the remainder of the board. It's about 18 people. So, but most of the other elected officials, they lean on the commissioners for their thoughts and their feelings on policy. And that's the way it gets put together. So.
Yeah, each of the other associations typically only have 1 member on the board, where the county commissioners have a number of them on the board. All I was saying is that we're getting people from the auditors, the treasurers, the recorders, social service directors, and such. We have a voice too, and so, but we want to make sure that by having their organization, it keeps them foremost. So, I'm sorry if I misread you.
But it's a good idea to kick around,
What's that?
looking at that due structure.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's up to you.
So can we get a little look around the building?
Okay.
Kelly's gonna show you around. Yeah.
So how was the wedding?
It was good. Yeah.
Still on the honeymoon stage?
No.
No?
It's harvest time.
And then when you introduce yourself, I went, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Not used to it.
she has the new last name.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
You're fine.